This Eagle defense is the best in the National Football League. Maybe this is going to be the team that quiets him down. Maybe this is the Super Bowl where it's like, yeah, you know, not the best Kelce game.
I trust Harrison Butker a hell of a lot more kicking field goals than Jake Elliott.
How do the Chiefs go ahead and try and defend Saquon Barkley? It's going to be the real test.
If they win the turnover battle, I think the Chiefs have a pretty good shot of winning this game.
I do really wonder how they're going to handle Chris Jones, especially with the Cam Jurgens back injury that you talked about. This is the #1 reason I really think, Cole, why Eagle fans are so excited about this game.
So in today's video, I have an in-depth conversation with Thomas Mott, who covers the Birds on his channel over on YouTube, about who is going to win the Super Bowl and why. We talk about the sickness spreading around the Eagles locker room, how the Chiefs defense can try to limit Saquon, Philly's #1 pass defense against Patrick Mahomes, the X Factor himself, and so much more. So let's get into it. But first, how about those? All right, Thomas, you cover the Birds all the time. You know the ins and outs of this team. Let's talk injuries. I know we're recording on Thursday. This will drop Friday, but there are some injuries worth talking about with your team, a sickness/illness that's going around. I personally am not that bothered. Like, they're going to play, but if it's a stomach bug or something like that, like, it could be hitting some players on Sunday. They said it's kind of going around. What are you hearing about that, and do you have any concerns?
Yeah, so it all started on Wednesday, where it was like Jalen Carter might miss practice, which he then didn't, with an illness. And I'm the same as you. It's like illness, you know, does he have a little cough? It's probably something minor. And then Thursday rolls around, and it's like, it's not just Jalen Carter. Nolan Smith was spotted wearing a mask. He was asked by a reporter for a question, and Nolan Smith was like, you probably don't want to ask me a question because you don't want what I have right now. And then we're hearing flu-like symptoms going around the Eagle locker room. And so, as you know, there's no way to confirm who exactly has it, how bad it is. Is it going to be a massive impact on Sunday? But as an Eagle fan, it's just not what you want to hear. And this is, you know, the biggest game of the entire season. And personally, as I'm sure we're going to see as we talk about this the next couple of minutes, I'm very high on Philadelphia in this game. I think they have a real chance to go ahead and win Super Bowl 59. And you don't want any sort of hiccups in their way. So we'll see. I'm sure it's going to change day after day. But as of right now, there's something like the flu going around the Eagle locker room, and that's not a good sign.
One of the most stressed I've ever been for a game. It wasn't a playoff game, but it was a division game against the Broncos. The Chiefs had won so many games in a row at that point. I can't remember if it got it to 15 or 16. It was some ungodly number in a row wins. Like, Mahomes hadn't lost to the Broncos in his career. It was so stupid. He got the stomach bug the night before and was like on IV and all that stuff, but he did not play well. And so that was like my worst fear. They ended up losing. It is what it is. But that was like one of the scariest things. Was like Saturday night, they said, hey, Patrick Mahomes has the stomach bug or something. I was like, that is awful. Thankfully, it's only Thursday, and it will go around a little bit with the team, but surely it won't be anything super concerning, and most of those players are going to end up playing. It's the freaking Super Bowl after all. But what about, like, illness aside, what about one guy that kind of caught my eye was Devontae Smith with the hamstring. Any concern there? He was limited at least yesterday. Do you think that's more precautionary than anything else?
Yeah, so Devontae Smith's been in and out of the practice lineup, kind of like A.J. Brown over the course of the entire playoffs, and so he's going to play. He said yesterday, we're totally fine, no issues there, it's all precautionary. And Philadelphia, in the past, I think, has not done a very good job of keeping guys as fresh as possible later on in the season. It was one of the reasons why, like 5 years ago, they fired their entire sports medicine staff, because they were like, okay, we are not staying healthy. They had a bunch of hamstring problems. And I think Nick Sirianni this season has done a very good job. And we've seen this at times, even in the regular season, where randomly someone pops up with a hamstring or pops up with a calf, and you're like, whoa, what's that? And then they all assure us we're totally fine, and then they ball out on Sunday. So Devontae Smith, not a big worry there. There was some kind of question marks about Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson, the center and guard, both of which have said they're 100% playing and they feel very good. So minus the sickness right now going around the Eagle locker room, Philadelphia is about as healthy as they possibly can be.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see, because it's a Super Bowl. Everybody's going to play, but I am curious to see third quarter, fourth quarter, how, in particular, Cam Jurgens with the back and Dickerson with the knee are holding up. Like, maybe it's fine and they're all good to go, but maybe that's when you could see something start to wear down there, and that'll be kind of the big question mark for me, because they're going to play. Everybody on these reports are going to want to play. It's a Super Bowl. You want to win, everything on the line, but how will your body hold up over time? Thankfully, for both teams, you had 2 weeks of rest, or however it goes. It's basically a bye week between the conference championship and the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are looking extremely healthy. I mean, but they've only played a couple of games in the past 6 weeks. If you consider they rested most of their starters week 18, that's advantage Chiefs in my eyes, just from an injury front. But again, that's affecting both sides of the ball, and that doesn't necessarily matter. What about defense real quick? What about Zach Bond? He popped up last Friday with a groin, was a DNP. Is he fine? He's a key piece of your defense, a guy that is all over the place.
Yeah, he should be totally fine. It's basically the same thing I just said with Smitty. Randomly pops up just to kind of have a little bit of precautionary, make sure it's nothing serious, and then he's good to go. So, yeah, he's a massive piece of Sunday's performance for Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. And let's just stay on this side of the ball since we're there. Eagles defense, Chiefs offense. I mean, that's the number one scoring defense, number one passing defense. Another interesting stat is the Chiefs offense, they're not explosive really at all. 30th, 32nd in explosive plays, both in the run game and in the pass game, but it's a lot of quick, decisive, efficient at the line of scrimmage or within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Within first or second read, Mahomes is getting the ball out. They've been very effective with that. A lot of 10, 12, 13 plus play drives that it can end in points. They had more long drives like that with points scored than any other team in the NFL. But the Eagles defense are one of the best tackling units in the NFL. And then they are very good at these, just stopping these quick passes. And that's going to be a big key for me on this side of the ball. And I would be curious to hear your thoughts is just how the Eagles are going to be able to stop the quick passing game. And then can the Chiefs kind of use that to their advantage and maybe get some deeper plays going down the field?
Yeah, I think the entire Eagles season is broken up into section 1, which is pre-bye week, so the first 5 weeks of the season, and then post-bye week. And pre-bye week, there were a ton of question marks, not just about the Eagle defense, but Vic Fangio, because Fangio's defense is very, bend but don't break, don't let things go over the top, keep everything in front of you. But the problem was in those first 5 games and why they lost to Atlanta and why they looked pretty bad against some of these other football teams is they weren't tackling well at all. And it was during the bye week, Nick Sirianni shaves his head, goes bald, which, trust me, in Philadelphia, we believe that had a big difference maker in it. But also, they did a bunch of new tackling drills, which all of us in the media were like, how is this going to help? And then since then, like you mentioned, they've been one of the best tackling teams in the NFL. So I think Bird fans' hope is Eagle defensive line is going to be very good if Jalen Carter, obviously, sickness is going to be, healthy. He's been dominant so far this postseason. Nolan Smith's emergence has been unbelievable for everyone here in Philly. Defensive line is able to do their job, and then the Zach Bonds of the world, the Cooper DeJeans of the world are going to make open field tackles. And if you can't throw deep on the Eagles team, but you also can't break tackles and turn a 5-yard catch into a 15-yard catch, it could be, it's always hard when you talk about the Chiefs offense because it's the Chiefs offense, but it could be slow sledding for the Chiefs offense against this Bird defense. This is the number one reason I really think, Cole, why Eagle fans are so excited about this game, because you go two years back and it's like, can they hold on against Patrick Mahomes? First 1 to 40 is kind of what that game felt like, especially in the fourth quarter. Can we just get one stop? Whereas this Eagle defense is like the best in the National Football League. And a stat that I saw yesterday that I put on my show was, top, number one defenses in Super Bowls against opposing teams starting quarterbacks. The opposing team's quarterbacks are 3-11 overall. You think back to that Super Bowl 50, or not Super Bowl 50, the one with Denver and Seattle, where the Seattle defense was much better than the offense. I think Eagle fans have a lot of faith and trust in this defense going forward.
It's interesting because I always look at stuff on paper. And I'm like, okay, can I throw my bias aside and just look at this stuff on paper and how things should be playing out? And on paper, and before I get to my answer, because I had something to say about that with those statistics, because Patrick Mahomes is the X factor and breaks statistics all throughout his career. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and everybody has a love language. For example, Chiefs fans love watching their team win. Well, regardless of what that is for you, we can all agree on one thing. Everybody loves quality sound. Well, that's where the Raycon's everyday headphones come right in. Their latest model is better than ever with a 40-hour battery life and a comfortable ergonomic design that you'll love to wear all day long. I obviously have no hair and still find them very comfortable in spite of that. The everyday headphones also come with active noise cancellation, which works really well. I obviously can barely hear myself right now, and that's pretty difficult to find at an accessible price point. That's the beauty of Raycon, though, because you can get quality audio that starts at just half the price as other premium audio brands. Plus, if you don't fall in love with your Raycons, they even offer a 30-day happiness guarantee return policy, no questions asked. I personally have been using using Raycon products for a couple years now, using them while I work long hours at my desk, on phone calls with both of my editors, and the noise cancellation helps me tune out the real world, my family, upstairs mainly, and to lock in to make more content for all of you. So what are you waiting for to support the channel and get Raycon's everyday headphones for yourself or a loved one? Go to buyraycon.com/Chiefs20, where all headphones are up to 20% off. That's right, all headphones are up to 20% off on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/Chiefs20. And yeah, on paper, I mean, there's dogs everywhere in the secondary. Like Cooper DeJean was a great get. Quinyon Mitchell has been insane. You got the vets back there, CJ Gardner-Johnson and Slay. And that's not even the only guys back there that are great in coverage, because Zach Bond is doing his thing as well on the second level. So yeah, on paper, this is going to be a very tough match. Mahomes is kind of breaks every statistical norm that you could possibly imagine. He's 3-0 in the playoffs against number one passing defenses. And I remember Super Bowl 54 against the 49ers. That defense was insane. And like on paper, you're like, yeah, they probably shouldn't win this game. But it's just like, there's just the but Mahomes factor. So I am going to be looking at that on what happens when the play breaks down, the Eagles are in zone. Like, here's a question I have for you. You guys gave up, and this could be game plan specific. So maybe you'll be working a lot more to take Kelce away in this game, or Noah Gray, tight end too. But last conference championship game, NFC championship, you gave up, the Eagles defense gave up over 100 yards to Ertz. So is that any concern for you, for Kelce, Noah Gray, and the Chiefs tight end room in this one?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Philadelphia this season has not been fantastic overall against tight ends. Ertz has had multiple good games whenever the Commanders played Philadelphia during the regular season. I do think the Birds' defensive plan going into that Washington game was like, Jaden Daniels is not going to beat us with his legs, because he kind of did that in the Eagles' lone loss late in the season whenever they played on the road against the Commanders. That was the Jaden Daniels running around, running for big first downs on 4th and 11, throwing 5 touchdown passes. We're going to go ahead and neutralize him and stop, obviously, Terry McLaurin on the outside. And they did both of those in that game at the expense of allowing, obviously, Zach Ertz. He had like 10 or 11 catches and was kind of their only real super threat on offense that entire game. And so I do wonder if Fangio shifts things around, because there isn't really a wide receiver threat on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Xavier Worthy is probably the scariest one. I'm very curious if they're going to go ahead and slow him down. But if I was Vic Fangio, everything goes for Kelce, because we've seen Travis Kelce, especially you guys have, in these games. Every single time that you think Travis Kelce, maybe this is going to be the team that quiets him down. Maybe this is the Super Bowl where it's like, yeah, not the best Kelce game. He goes off. He has 10 catches. He has 2 touchdowns and does what Travis Kelce does best. So my guess is, and I don't know what Vic Fangio is planning, he's had 2 weeks to figure it out, so hopefully he's figured out something good, is that all the focus goes now, instead of like on a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, onto a receiver or a tight end like Travis Kelce, and they can figure out to slow him down. I do think all the Mahomes scrambling and all the Mahomes magic plays that he's so well known for. He ran a lot in the Buffalo Bill AFC Championship game. That's the other big focus. It's not just Mahomes' arm, which we know is, world class. He killed us in the fourth quarter of Super Bowl 57 by just running on what was supposed to be a bum ankle, by the way, and then he just dashes for a big first down. So those are the 2 things I'm most worried about, and very curious how Philadelphia's going to defend it.
Yeah, according to NFL fans, Mahomes fakes ankle injuries for attention, and then every game is rigged in Chiefs' favor. Right. If it's rigged in Chiefs' favor, here's what I'm confused about. I saw a betting statistic earlier this morning that every single state was betting the Eagles outside of Kansas. And I can't remember what betting company it was, but it was every state they were legal. Everybody took the Eagles. I'm like, listen, if the game's rigged and you know it, bet the Chiefs and make some money. Okay? Come on now. That's why I know they just be saying stuff online, but it's fine. Just real briefly here, last game these guys played, because we talk a lot about Super Bowl 57, but I would say the closer thing to look at would be Week 11 last year. It's still not the same. Yeah. Different players. Again, you have Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and some other guys that just weren't there. But Kelce was one of the leaders in the room. He had a fumble inside the 20. Mahomes threw a pick inside the 20. And then MVS dropped a pass at the 3. It wouldn't have been like the game-winning touchdown per se, because you guys would have still had like 2 minutes left in the game. But those are crucial mistakes that the Chiefs cannot make in this game if they want to beat a team as good as the Eagles, especially now that you guys have what I would say, all due respect to everybody on your guys' offense, I would say is the X factor. Saquon Barkley just is the game changer for that team. Hurts is great. A.J. Brown, one of my favorite receivers. I like Goddard. I like Smith, Devontae Smith, but Saquon Barkley is a different animal. So against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles that lead the league in average time of possession, 33 minutes a game on offense, they averaged with the ball, grind your gears, slow burn, kill you in the run game. The Chiefs offense cannot turn the ball over. If they win the turnover battle, even neutral it, I think the Chiefs have a pretty good shot of winning this game. That's going to be a big key for me to watch in this one.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair. I actually literally, like 30 minutes ago, was watching some highlights from that Week 11 matchup at Kansas City. So it was in Arrowhead. It was also raining. It was kind of this weird point in the Eagles season where they hadn't quite yet fallen off a cliff, but they didn't look super dangerous. And obviously, the 2 turnovers inside the red zone, the punch out of Travis Kelce, and then it was Kevin Byard, who's now the Bears safety, the pick of Mahomes in the end zone. The one good thing he did last year were big-time game changers. But I'm with you on turnovers, right? If Philadelphia is in the hole in terms of turnovers on Sunday, they're probably losing this game. It's been the complete change on this defense, besides tackling, like we already talked about. In the postseason, Philadelphia is getting multiple punch-outs a game. They're getting multiple interceptions a game. People talk about how close that Rams game was, and I know ifs and buts in football are kind of annoying because every single game has a couple of if plays. There were 4 dropped interceptions in the first half that were like in Darius Slay's hands right here, and he runs it in for a pick 6. On the final drive, where we were all, holding our breath to see if the Eagles hang on, Cooper DeJean had a ball right in his breadbasket and dropped it. And so Philly's been creating and even dropping a ton of turnovers. If they can do that again against the Chiefs on Sunday, how many fewer possessions do you give Patrick Mahomes? And if you're able to take away possessions from him and run successfully with Saquon Barkley, which I'm curious your thoughts on if the Chiefs are going to give 100 yards rushing in the postseason, because that's been a problem so far for our opposing teams. If they can do that, though, that's why Eagle fans are excited, because they feel like we have been doing that, and so we will do that. Therefore, Philadelphia is going to win.
Yeah, the turnover stuff's interesting because the Bills fumbled 4 times in the AFC Championship and recovered all 4. Like, some of the weirdest stuff happens in these games, and there is an element of luck with the turnover stuff, like turnovers that should have been made, didn't, or the ball bounces a funny way on a fumble. You could even recall Super Bowl 57, you know that, but that was a pretty weird fumble by Hurts, and it bounced perfectly in the direction of the Chiefs' end zone. And Bolton was able to scoop it up with momentum, and he almost did it twice in that game and would have been Super Bowl MVP, just saying. That's a side note. But one other thing, I was looking off screen when you were talking because I just tweeted this out earlier. Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts have both thrown an interception, or have not thrown an interception in 9 games. Obviously, Hurts does not pass as much, but they've been playing really clean ball. 195 pass attempts thrown for Hurts during that span. 288 for Mahomes, but both of these guys are playing really clean football. One thing I'll be curious about for the Chiefs defense is if they can get to Hurts, because he's been sacked a piss ton, 11 times in the playoffs alone. Some of that was the knee, but even in the regular season, top 10 sacked quarterback, and you guys threw a pass play 32nd or 31st in the NFL because you run the ball so much with all that success. That's something I'm watching, but before we switch over to that side, do you have anything you're watching along the trenches and how you're looking at combating and kind of coming at Mahomes just from their perspective on Caliendo or Joe Tooney on the left side? It's kind of a long-winded question, but you guys don't have a lot of pressures. You don't have a lot of sacks. I mean, you have 2 more than the Chiefs, but you're so sticky in coverage in the secondary, sometimes that doesn't matter. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on D-line against the Chiefs O-line and how to combat that?
Sure. Well, and I was going to mention, you just mentioned being sticky in coverage. I got a lot of flack halfway through the season for saying that this year's defense is leagues better than 2022, and everyone would always say, Thomas, they had 70 sacks. Like, how can you say that? But we saw what happened in the Super Bowl when you don't get sacks. I mean, Mahomes carved that secondary up. It was really bad. And a lot of people thought the Eagle linebacker play in 22 was really good, and it was comparatively to previous years because the Eagles have never invested heavily in linebackers. What Zach Bond has done, and now Oren Burks filling in for Nakobe Dean, way better than 22. So there is a difference in terms of both defenses. The key, though, for this defense in terms of the actual pass rush, and even though the numbers aren't fantastic, when they get to the quarterback, they're able to bring him down. And we saw this in a massive way against Jaden Daniels, because what Jaden Daniels does, and obviously Lamar Jackson and even Patrick Mahomes, he's slower but very elusive. They get around outside of the pocket. They make that one edge rusher miss. They outrun him a little bit, and then Yeah, he's just fast enough. Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt are two of the fastest defensive ends I've ever seen in Philadelphia. They're unbelievably fast. There was a huge fourth down sack in like the third or fourth quarter of the NFC title game where Jaden Daniels is at a full sprint to his right. Like, he should clear everybody. And Nolan Smith runs him down, trips him up. It's a sack, and they turn it over on downs. And the rookie Jalen Hunt, former safety, he's now an edge rusher. He's a lightning bolt coming off the edge. So my hope is that Mahomes is not going to be able to be as Mahomey, as they say on all the broadcasts, and do his little dink and dunk and go this way and then go back that way and then come around and throw it. I hope that they can get to him because Jalen Carter's a monster and Jalen Carter's going to have his day. They're definitely going to be doubling Jalen Carter probably all night long. So someone else is going to have to win, whether it's Milton Williams, who's next to him, Moro Ojomo, who's behind him, Jalen Hunt, obviously Nolan Smith, and BG, depending on how healthy he's going to be. But you got to get Mahomes to the ground because no matter how sticky you are in coverage, if he's running around there for 5 seconds and then just think there's Kelce for 30 and the game's over. So hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah, you mentioned BG. I thought it was cool that he was able, Brandon Graham, for anyone wondering what's BG? Bluegrass? What does that mean? But BG, Brandon Graham, he is back from IR, tore his triceps in like November. So it's pretty cool to see how quickly he was able to work back. I would assume he's just on a limited snap count, but he's a vet, been in the game a long time. He's savvy. Yeah, he'll be one to watch. It'll probably be like on a rotational basis, but he's another guy that's going to help that D-line for sure. If we flip sides, let's talk about Chiefs D a little bit and Eagles offense. Tush push is like unstoppable, basically. I don't think you're going to replicate what the Chiefs were able to do against the Buffalo Bills. They run a JV tush push in comparison, but how are you looking at the trenches on that side of the ball for your team?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think from an offensive perspective is how do the Chiefs go ahead and try and defend Saquon Barkley? Therefore, how many people do they put in the box? And then when they do have positive numbers in the box, 7 versus Philadelphia's 6, how do the one-on-one matchups go? Because that's how Philadelphia's dominated every single football team so far this season, is like teams are trying to stop Saquon. And it's so funny for Eagle fans to watch the national media. They watch ESPN and it's like, what if the Chiefs sell out to stop Saquon? And it's like, who would have thought to sell out to stop Saquon? It's what teams have been doing every single game. I mean, the first play of the NFC title game is an 8-man box, and Saquon Barkley takes it 60 yards to the house. They've been doing so well man-to-man blocking and also getting some collateral damage. And so if the Chiefs are able to shore that up, they've obviously been great against the run from a defensive line perspective in the postseason. It'll be a fascinating game. But I do really wonder how they're going to handle Chris Jones, especially with the Cam Jurgens back injury that you talked about, right? Because Chris Jones obviously playing more D-tackle, even though obviously he can move all around the defensive line. But he's probably going to test Cam Jurgens very early. And Cam Jurgens is a little bit undersized of a center, fantastic run blocker still, gets out in space like Kelce used to. That's the matchup that I'm very curious to go ahead and watch, and I'm just hopeful that whatever pain injections they give Cam Jurgens, however long he's been dealing with this back injury, it's not a factor, and they can slow down Chris Jones, because in Super Bowl 57, he didn't do much. Now, the field conditions for both sides, not just one, both sides weren't that great for pass rushers, but they did have a good plan the last time they played in a Super Bowl, even though Chris Jones did pretty well in that Week 11 matchup last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, the Chiefs did sack Hurts 5 times last week on field conditions that weren't ice. So looking at that, it's like I have a little bit more faith in the Chiefs D-line that admittedly from a sack standpoint, both of these teams have taken steps back. The Eagles in 2022 led this. Dude, it's crazy stat. I had to look at it twice to make sure I remembered right. 70 sacks on the year is what the Eagles had in 2022. That is an ungodly amount. There are some things that I do like about the Chiefs defense. They are the 8th best run defense in the NFL. That's kind of how they finished. And I think that's with Week 18 included when they had all their starters out and the Broncos did whatever they wanted. So before that, they were top 5, 7 in most of these metrics. I found an interesting stat about Saquon, and this isn't to discredit him because I think he's one of the best players in the NFL, but I did see a stat. About 1,500 of his yards this year, regular season and playoffs, have come against a 22nd ranked defense or worse. I'm not saying that the Chiefs, because they're top 10, they're just suddenly going to be able to slow this man down. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think the Chiefs, if anybody, when you look at how good they are at tackling and just how good they have been against the run, I think you could slow him down. That's the only way you're going to be able to win is if you can hold Saquon to 100-ish yards. Like if he's popping off for like 160 and 2 touchdowns, that's going to be much more difficult to overcome, especially if you go up early and you just drain clock on all these crazy long drives that your offense does. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the Chiefs' run defense. And you talked about it a little bit, like they need to stack the box. Every week they say, yeah, just sell out to stop Saquon, and it doesn't work. I do think that's a tale of just the two sides here. Can the Chiefs do it? They haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher in a game, in a playoff game, in like 18 or 19 playoff games, which is pretty stupid. Different teams, but in 2020, Derrick Henry was playing lights out, 1,500 yards on the season, and the Chiefs held him to like 22 carries for 69 yards. If they do something like that to Saquon, I would be very comfortable in saying, without looking at everything else, that the Chiefs win it. But I'd be curious to hear your thought.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I totally echo. If Saquon goes, I think I've said if he goes for 150 plus, then Philadelphia wins. They probably win by 10. That's kind of my hope. That's like the best case scenario, because 150, I mean, how many more times are you going to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes if he's running all over the place? There have been times throughout this season where Philadelphia's matched up against a very good run defense. At the time they went to Baltimore, I think it was week 14. That was the number one run defense, and that was the big talking point. It was like, well, Saquon's played some bad teams, but here comes Baltimore, and he had like 130 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was electric in that game, or maybe one touchdown, but he was very, very good. And so they face teams that have good run defenses, which gives me hope they're going to be able to do it against the Chiefs. I am very curious, and I haven't seen anyone else talk about this. Saquon has never played the Chiefs. The Chiefs have never played against Saquon Barkley. The one time the Giants were supposed to play Saquon Barkley, he was out with an injury. And so you kind of wonder if that changes anything, like we haven't gotten to see, A, Saquon Barkley ever play the Chiefs, or B, Saquon Barkley behind the Eagles' offensive line, because you can argue Saquon in his previous form, whenever he's with the Giants versus where he is now, was night and day because of the offensive line. So I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to stop him. Obviously, I'm a little biased and hoping that that's the case, but it's going to be the real test. And I think early in this football game, especially like first quarter, Cole, we're going to find out real quick what they're going to be able to do against Saquon Barkley, because every single playoff game that we've had, whether it's the first play in the NFC Championship game or a couple of the first drives in the previous two, he hits a 10-yarder, and then he hits a 15-yarder, and then a couple of 6s, and nothing is ever behind the line of scrimmage, and you're like, it's a matter of time until he breaks one, and sure enough, he did in the Rams game. It did it early in the NFC title game, and so, the first quarter is going to be very important for that. The other matchups, really, McDuffie and A.J. Brown, obviously, that's a huge one. If they're able to stop and slow down Saquon Barkley, how often is Hurts going to go to A.J. Brown knowing Trent McDuffie is on him? And then, of course, Devontae Smith. If there's one player who's been consistently great in playing the Kansas City Chiefs, it's the Slim Reaper. Devontae Smith has had 99 yards and then over 100. He's so good. It's just because the Eagles have built their roster to where, okay, we got to worry about Saquon. Okay, A.J. Brown. Okay, Jalen Hurts. Oh, yeah, Devontae Smith. Oh, yeah, Dallas Goedert. Two guys that had big games. Something that I totally forgot, because I did not want to go back and watch Super Bowl 57. I hadn't done it in a long time. The Eagles had no running game in that game. I mean, their leading rusher was Kenny Gainwell. He had 7 carries for 20 yards. Jalen obviously ran for like 30, but he was the quarterback. They did not have a running back basically play in that game. How different does it look if they were actually able to run the football on that one versus letting Jalen Hurts throw the football all over the yard? So a lot of places to look into this, but I'm very curious. A.J. Brown and Trent McDuffie, how often does Jalen trust going that way? Because the last time they played in a Super Bowl, McDuffie was still pretty young, and they targeted him with A.J. on him. McDuffie's kind of a big deal right now, and that's really the matchup to watch on the outside.
Yeah, I'm kind of treating that matchup as like a wash in my head. Like, I feel like A.J. Brown will make a couple plays here or there. But I also think if you're the Eagles and you're looking at like creating some favorable matchups, you like don't worry about McDuffie, because there's other guys you could take advantage of.
Fair,
like if Devontae Smith is lined up and you can create a matchup with him and on like Chamari Connor or something. Like Devontae Smith had 99 yards against the Chiefs last year, and then the Chiefs are not great at all against tight ends. So watch for Goddard. I hit his higher on my underdog pick'em for receptions. I went with Devontae Smith's higher on yards, just because I feel like if they're going to try to create matchups and Jalen Hurts is going to look anywhere, of course he's going to look to A.J. Brown from time to time because he's that good. But I kind of count that as a wash because McDuffie is great too. But you're going to be looking at Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and creating some matchups on either like Chamari Connor, or can you somehow get Nick Bolton in coverage? If that's the case, target those two. And that's where I am a little nervous about the defense, because the middle of the field has been an issue, and it's been an issue all season long. That basically hasn't changed. I'm glad they have Jalen Watson back. The Chiefs have Jalen Watson back, who broke his ankle earlier. Yeah. He played last game, and he looked good. He'll be out there. but he's not a guy that plays on the inside a lot. That's your two outside corners. So the problem that can still be on the inside. And since I just talked about two of my favorite underdog picks in this interview with Thomas, I did want to share some of my picks for this game. I have two sets, and one does feature the higher on Dallas Goedert. Travis Kelce was basically the free pick, and any new signup who uses code HBTC will get that free pick in the lobby, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Nico Remigio, he's had the longest kick and punt return in the playoffs, so give me the longest punt return of the game for him. Then Patrick Mahomes, he hasn't thrown a pick in 9 games. I went with the lower on his interceptions as well. I also have another set of picks that I not only shared in my last video, but is on the homepage of the Underdog app, and this is combined with a no sweat pick. Any customer on the Underdog app, new or current, can use this no sweat pick and either win or get your credit back. So this is a no-brainer. Please be responsible, but those are my picks if you want a tail. Link to both of those are in the description down below. Something you said about I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to stop Saquon, I still go back to Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson. Can they hold up? So when you say, hey, first quarter is a big tell, well, my question is third and fourth quarter. How's that looking? If it's close and they're both banged up and kind of moving around awkwardly, which, hey, maybe at halftime they get a nice little shot to help them out, and it's fine. But that's what I'm going to kind of be watching for. You're never going to stop Saquon. I just don't believe it. He's too good. But can you limit him and slow him down? One thing about that Derrick Henry game, and we're talking about two different teams, but that was the AFC Championship, and he averaged 188 rushing yards a game in the first 2 playoff games before the AFC Championship. So that's what I'm just kind of looking at. I'm like, can you do enough? Can you just do enough to slow him down? And then I do think you're going to have to put a lot of weight on the shoulders of Patrick Mahomes to just kind of be a hero in this game. But if there's anybody in the NFL that I'm going to trust to do that, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. I understand I'm a Chiefs fan and I'm biased, but dude, he is on a trajectory like you've never seen. And in these games, in these moments when you're like, yeah, the lights are bright, he's probably not going to play well. Like a lot of people point to like Super Bowl 55 and him playing awful. I'm like, he didn't actually play awful. He had 2 touchdown passes bounce off of a running back and a receiver's face mask. And he still played pretty well. Now their O-line was decimated and they're healthy this time. So I don't think you're going to see anything like that. But even in that one game that they're like, Mahomes was awful, I'm like, if you watch the game, he really wasn't awful. They still lost bad, and a loss is a loss. Yeah. Like, I'm going to take that L, even though PTSD allows me to. I don't even remember that game. Like, I've never watched it again. Must
be nice.
Nothing. Never watched it again. But yeah, that's going to be something I'm watching as like later in the game. How's this going to end up panning out? And a key to victory, I said for the Chiefs, is like they got to go up, dude, and they got to go up early. Like I would not like it if they are like in Super Bowl 57, they were down 10. I was actually fine. But if we're down 10 in this game coming out into the third quarter, I just don't like it based on how your guys' offense plays and how good the defense is. I think if the Chiefs want success, you got to come out first 3 drives for the Chiefs, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Just they've got to get a bunch of points up on the board. And if they do that, I like the Chiefs odds in this one. I'll go score prediction, and then I'd love to hear kind of your final thoughts on that too. But I have the Chiefs. This doesn't make sense on paper. I always go with my head on these score predictions. Like last week, I predicted the Chiefs will win, or 2 weeks ago, AFC Championship. They beat the Bills by 3, and it was like, I don't even remember. It was like 30-27, and it was close. This one doesn't make as much sense to me because I'm going higher scoring a little bit. 31-27 Chiefs, but I just think if you want to beat the Eagles, you've got to go up, and you've got to put up around probably 30 points if you want to be able to get this done. Some are saying, hey, based on how the Eagles hogged the time of possession and the Chiefs, they were top 10 in time of possession too. This could very well be like more of like a slugfest, kind of ugly.
Could be.
And maybe that is how it plays out. I'm just done assuming my head is going to work looking at the stat lines on these teams in the Super Bowl. So I'm going with a little bit higher scoring game for this one.
Yeah, I'm in a similar standpoint, and I'm obviously right there with you. If Philadelphia gets up to a 10-0 lead, I think it's a wrap. I've said that every single playoff game, and it was virtually true, especially in the Commander game. They got out to a nice size lead, and it was like, all right, well, smooth sailing from here because Saquon Barkley has been so fantastic. I always wonder in a Super Bowl about the effect of being in a Super Bowl because Kansas City is so comfortable in these darn things. And Philadelphia, you think that they are, obviously, just 2 years ago. But because you lost 2 years ago and you hadn't been prior to that since 2017, the pressure is really there. And so I just don't want a slow start by Philly. It doesn't mean you got to be up 10-0. Don't go down 10-0. Don't turn the ball over instantly. And as long as they don't do that, I have a lot of faith in the Bird defense. I think the Philadelphia defense is going to really show the Chiefs and the world that this has really been the best defense all season long. And a lot of people, didn't want to give them that, or maybe just didn't watch enough Eagle games. But really, when you get down to it, I think Philadelphia's been the best defense since Week 5 the rest of the year. And so I have this weird confidence in this game. Going into 2017, I was not that confident. Going into 2022, I was certainly not that confident. I'm 31-21 Philadelphia, and I really think that they're going to hit a couple of big ones from Saquon Barkley, and I think they're going to be able to get some turnovers, whether it's from Mahomes or punch-outs or however they do it. If I'm going 31-21 Birds.
That makes sense. I think if the Eagles win, they probably need to win in a non-one-score game. Like that probably, just what you said, they go up early, and they just refuse to let the Chiefs catch up. Maybe it forces Mahomes and them to press a little bit and make a mistake or two. If you do that, I could see a path to that playing out. I do think if it's close, just the clutch factor in Mahomes, and then special teams. I trust Harrison Butker a hell of a lot more kicking field goals than Jake Elliott. Do you have any concerns with special teams if it even happens to be close?
Not necessarily on kick coverage like we did in 2022 where Kadarius Toney magically, it's like, oh my gosh, he's really going to run it almost all the way back. Eagle fans are all using this mantra, which you've heard applied elsewhere, but ignore where you've heard it before. But they're saying too big to rig, right? And that's not for the refs. Some Eagle fans will say that. I'm not one of the people that's like, it's rigged for the Chiefs. Too big to rig in the sense that we want to be up 10-0 or up 10 points in the fourth quarter. That way it doesn't come down to a Jake Elliott field goal, because there's not an Eagle fan in the world right now who would trust a 49-yarder down 2 with 2 seconds left to beat the Chiefs. No, none of us would believe that would actually go ahead and go in. So make it too big. That way it can't be messed up by Jake Elliott. Or if you're down, or if you're up 2, deep ball from Mahomes that, magically lands in his hands and it's a first down, or Mahomes, like we saw in the fourth quarter of 22, he runs for 30 yards and gets another first down. We want it to be double digits in the fourth quarter. We don't have to think about Jake Elliott kicking the football.
1 for 8, 50 plus on the year, which is pretty crazy. 12.5 field goal percentage. And then the Chiefs have blocked 2. Leo Chanel has blocked 2 field goals, which is insane. So if it's close, I had an Eagles fan tell me, hey, if it's close and it comes down to special teams, Chiefs are winning this game. But I think what you're saying is right. Like, if you guys want to win, I feel like that's the path, is a non-one-score game, kind of like the Bills game. The Chiefs won loss this year. That wasn't Week 18 against the Broncos with backups. But the 2 minutes left, Josh Allen, hero ball on fourth down, scored a touchdown. You're up by 9.
Yep, and it's a wrap.
Yeah, there's really no path to victory there for the Chiefs. At the end of the day, man, I just say, much respect to the Eagles. Like, Nick Sirianni is whatever to me, but I have a lot of respect for the players, the organization. I'm a big Howie Roseman fan. Like, he's built a great roster. You guys are where you are for a reason. You're back to your second Super Bowl in 3 years for a reason. If the Chiefs fall, they fall. I think they win, but dude, what a run it's been. I've been saying since about week 10, I think it's the Eagles or the Lions that make the Super Bowl. Then obviously when the Lions started to get decimated, I was like, dude, even if they made it to the conference championship, I did not see a path of the Lions winning that game. So I really do think this is 2 of the best teams left in the NFL. I don't think it's a fluke that either of these teams are here, and may the better team win. So you've got your team winning. I've got my team winning. Surprise in our score predictions, but it's much respect to you guys, and I appreciate your time. Any final thoughts on this game before we wrap it up?
I'll just say this. It took the Avengers 2 times to beat Thanos, and so we're hoping that that's the exact same case in Philadelphia. That second time's the charm, and then you have 2 Super Bowl wins in your history, one against Brady and one against Mahomes, that make for a storybook Sunday for us here in Philadelphia.
I would really like the three-peat, and then whoever can win next year. Like, I just want the three-peat, but we're spoiled, man. 5 Super Bowls in 6 years. Regardless, I'm super proud of just what the Chiefs have done. I grew up in Kansas City, still live here. A lot of loss. I watched a lot of losses, man. So this is not. I'm not taking this run for granted. And yeah, I come off as crazy sometimes and troll around, but like I know it's not easy to get here. It's not easy to get back. So I would love the three-peat, and then you guys can win next year. I just want the three-peat, and there we are. But man, I appreciate your time, Thomas. Thanks, man. I hope you have a great weekend, and hopefully aren't too happy on Sunday night. No offense.
Best of luck. I was going to say the exact same thing. I hope you have a blast on Sunday until the end of the game.
How about those Chiefs?